Hello, hello. Happy Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whenever you're listening to this. Happy day. And welcome into Morgan's Pop Talks, breaking down the latest in reality TV and pop culture. You're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe. I have nothing to talk about or complain about at the top of the show rant today. Nothing, not a thing is going on. Easy breezy, beautiful, living my life. There's nothing really happening. No drama, no stress to talk about. I mean, it's a sharp contrast to last week, and I pretty much feel like it's because I'm no longer on my period. If you know, you know. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. But we're just chilling. And you know what? Let's normalize just chilling. Let's normalize not having a lot going on at the moment in my own personal life. You know, wake up, watch The Bachelorette for 6 hours, write some scripts, sit down in front of this camera, cook some dinner, and then go to bed. You know, we're living the good life over here. So if you're feeling a little bored in your life right now, like I am, don't be, because one day it's going to get chaotic. You're going to get back on your period eventually, and it's all going to go downhill. So we're just living in the moment. We're having a good day, and we have a lot to discuss on this week's episode of MPT. You know, Tuesday came around this week, Tuesday morning, and I was like, wow, nothing's going on. Nothing is going on. We had fantasy suites the night before, snooze fest, and I don't know what. I just had this feeling that Tuesday was going to be a wild day. I literally got up and I was like, what can I make content about today? And something in my head just said, just let the day progress a little bit. Just give it a moment. Let the day play out. And boy, oh boy, was Tuesday a doozy. We got a divorce announcement. We got a guilty verdict and everything in between. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. These are the three biggest headlines from the past week in reality TV and pop culture. Let's start with Tayshia Adams and Kaitlyn Bristowe. This drama took the world by storm. In case you missed it, Kaitlyn was on a podcast where she detailed how she came to get to know Zach Clark. Now, she never comes out and says Kaitlyn or Zach, or Tayshia or Zach, but everybody and their brother knows who Kaitlyn is referencing here. She said, you know, I had a friend or a coworker and her ex slid into my DMs. We started talking, so I reached out to her to let her know, hey, I'm going to go on a date with your ex. Just wanted to get you a heads up. This person didn't respond until the next day when she called her and said, I always knew you were a bad person. This just confirms it. You're showing your true colors. And then Kaitlyn made a comment, a joke, she's saying, about all that made me want to do was send an inappropriate picture of me and her ex to her, right? I'm not going to re-say it because I'm a prude. You guys know this. I can't talk like that. My mother will kill me. Anyways, all hell broke loose after that because obviously it's a very outlandish thing to say on a very public podcast. Not only that, people have been wanting the behind the scenes between Tayshia, Zach, and Kaitlyn, right? We all thought it was weird when they were spotted out together. We all were like, what about Tayshia? And I don't know where in the world Kaitlyn Bristowe's head was when she started saying this on the podcast. The story is fine. The story is fine. It is what it is. Give the people what they want. It's the joke that I think ruined it all, really. In my opinion, it's a tasteless joke. It's not my sense of humor. And, you know, I did see some screenshots of her off the Vine Facebook page where she says, you know, this is just my sense of humor. I was trying to make Jared laugh. He's a comedian. That's how I get validation, pretty much is what she was saying. But like at some point we got to stop with the excuses. And I told you guys this a while ago that I was starting to get KB fatigue. And this is a great reason why. There's only so many times that I can talk about reality TV and pop culture news about drama that surrounds Kaitlyn Bristowe without at some point getting a little tired of it. You know, it's like kind of same with Nick Viall, you know, like there's just always something going on with him that I try to just let it leave my brain as quickly as possible because I always feel like I'm just waiting for the next shoe to drop. But I did have some questions about it. So My first question is, why was Zach in Kaitlyn's DMs? First of all, I think that's weird, and people aren't asking that question enough. Second of all, Kaitlyn said something like Tayshia had muted Kaitlyn's account for Zach. Why? I need to know why. I just also think that whether she's posting about Jason or Jason's new relationship or now this, she knows how to make a headline. And I think her goal in life is to make a headline at Tayshia's expense, which is what I don't like. Like I said, if you just tell the story, it's fine. But now everybody's like, oh, where's Tayshia? Although Tayshia, she's probably got an engagement bump. But you know what else about Tayshia is a successful influencer in her own. People know her. People love her. She makes her money and she never has to do things like this to do it. And that's how I feel about that. Let's move on to Brittany Cartwright divorcing Jax Taylor. This week, Brittany Cartwright filed for divorce. And when I saw this headline on TMZ, I was transported back to 2017 when Brittany busted through those doors at her welcome party. What was it? Their housewarming party. Everyone, come and hear this. Everyone, come and see this. Brittany Cartwright is soon to be a single woman. So she cited irreconcilable differences with the date of separation listed at January 24th. She wants primary legal and physical custody of their 3-year-old son, Cruz, with Jax being allowed visitation. So she also petitioned to block both herself and Jax from receiving spousal support. I went back and rewatched the last episode of The Valley just to get a little refresher, crash course, and their issues were deep. Brittany wanted another baby while at the same time feeling like Jax was no longer attracted to her. Jax was not happy with Brittany's drinking. Brittany was not happy with the way that Jax spoke to her. Jax was feeling the pressure of being an adult, having a family and kids and a business. His anger was a big issue, right? And he was in inpatient treatment for his mental health. I know nobody wants to say this when it comes to Jax and Brittany, but was Tom Sandoval right? Let's jog your memory. 4 years ago, before Brittany and Jax got married, here comes Tom Sandoval, who brought up some concerns after Jax went through a major loss in his life and was a changed man. And all of a sudden went from a boyfriend who you didn't really trust to husband material, right? And Tom Sandoval and Ariana at the time were two of the only people that said, will this last? Well, did it last? Now, it's not infidelity, right? Which is what everybody thought it would be based on Jax's track record. But here we are. 5 years later, irreconcilable differences. 9 years together. I think Brittany and Jax are sad for the sake of Cruz, who wouldn't be sad for the sake of their child. But I also feel like Brittany feels like she's shedding dead weight. Did you see her Instagram post? She's getting her sparkle back, looking pretty in pink. And we love to see it. And look, if Jax needs help, I hope that he gets the help that he needs. And I hope everybody moves on in a happy and healthy way. And that for the sake of their son, they have a healthy co-parenting environment. But I think Tom Sandoval was right. Hurts to say. Truth hurts. All right. Last but certainly not least, it would not be the biggest headlines in pop culture if we didn't talk about baby Bieber. Oh my gosh, baby Bieber is here. I've never been so happy, thrilled, elated, ecstatic about a baby that I will never meet in my whole entire life or even physically lay eyes on in the flesh. But Justin Bieber and Hailey Bieber welcome their little baby boy, Jack Blues Bieber. I love the name. I love it. Jack Blues Bieber, JB, JBB. It's not like this weird, outlandish name like Blues you don't hear every day. But I still think it's cute. And Jack you hear every day. I love it. And it is a family tradition of naming their son JB, the initials. At least on Justin's side of the family, it's been going on for a couple generations now, right? His dad is Jeremy Bieber. He's Justin Bieber. Some of his siblings also have the JB initial. A source told People the pregnancy was something that they very much wished and prayed for. The day they found out that Hailey was pregnant was the best ever for Justin. I'm just so happy for them. You know, Justin Bieber made it out of that child star gauntlet. Alive, healthy, happy, having a good life. A lot of people thought that he and Hailey Bieber would not make it 5 years. They made it longer than Brittany and Jax. That's for sure. And I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see into the future. But I do feel like their relationship is solid. And I feel like, you know, when they got married, a lot of people had a lot of doubt that it wouldn't last at all. But look, now they're 5 years in, they have a baby together, and I think that they're pretty happy together. So here for baby Bieber. Snaps for Hailey and Justin. All right, let's move into the deep dive. And it's a legal deep dive this week. Tom Girardi was found guilty on 4 counts of wire fraud, facing 20 years in prison per count. So just to kind of give you a quick recap before we really get into it, Tom Girardi, disgraced powerhouse attorney, known in the Bravo world for his marriage to Real Housewives of Beverly Hills star Erika Jayne, right? Well, this week he was found guilty of embezzling more than $15 million from former clients in settlement money, taking all of their funds. So his most famous case was against Pacific Gas and Electric Company, depicted in the film Erin Brockovich, starring Julia Roberts. Tom Girardi, during this trial, had been battling dementia in recent years, but was deemed fit to stand trial in this case, which was a pretty surprising turn of events here. He even testified that every client got every penny that every client was supposed to get. Still, he was found guilty. Jury sided with the prosecution. So, while Erika has been linked to this scandal since 2020, she was not charged in the case. She then filed for divorce in 2021, but their split has not yet been finalized. Well, Kiki Monique from The Talk of Shame and the host of Pop Crime has been at the courthouse during this trial. She has seen Tom Girardi in the flesh. She has seen all the witnesses, opening statements, closing statements. She has seen it all. So I invited her on today to be a guest to give you the inside scoop all about this Tom Girardi trial. Okay, well, you must be exhausted because you have been at that courthouse every day for what, a month?
Yeah, the jury selection started August 6th. And so I think the last day, what was it? I don't even know. I don't even know the days anymore, but I think it's almost the end of August.
Well, let's start with jury selection because that had to be interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of eyes on this case for a lot of different reasons. One, Tom Girardi is one of the most prolific attorneys in California. And then you have Bravo fandom. So what was the jury selection like? Did they have to take certain things into consideration when picking jurors?
Yeah, I mean, they had a special questionnaire that had, obviously, the standard things they asked jurors, but they did throw in things about, what gossip sites do you listen to? What news sources do you use? Do you watch Bravo? Do you watch Real Housewives? Do you know, any of his characters, Erika Jayne, what do you know? So, I felt like that alone. And it was funny because even in those sections, they only gave you like 2 lines to answer. And I was like, I definitely could not fill in all of the Bravo shows I watched in 2 lines. But
Right.
yeah. And then, in the jury selection itself, obviously, once people filled out those questionnaires, if the attorneys had questions they wanted to dig deeper into. And one girl literally straight up said in the audience, she was like, I'm a Bravo girly. She did not get selected this way.
She's one of us. Yeah, it's so interesting when you look at all of the layers of it, but it was pretty early on, like during that jury selection, that you got your first look at Tom, right? In the flesh. What was that like?
Well, I had seen him at the competency hearing that had happened before. And so I kind of knew, that was when he showed up the first day with his slippers. He didn't come back in his slippers after that. But then he looked pretty similar, like literally similar in the trial. It looked like the same suit jacket even. It had gotten a little worse for the wear. He kind of went between, a pair of khaki pants and a pair of navy blue pants. He always wore white sneakers all the way down until the day I think it was the day he testified or the day they were starting to deliver or closing statements. He had a different pair of shoes. He had on a black pair of Skechers he had switched to.
So, up until this point, another big story has been his mental decline, right? Diagnosed with dementia. We didn't know if he was going to be able to stand trial. Based on your reaction of it, I mean, what was he like? Was he really incompetent? And why do you think they made the decision to continue to go forward with the trial if he was, battling dementia?
Well, again, during the competency hearing, they heard from several doctors. I think they all sort of agreed he had, mild dementia or mild cognitive impairment is what the prosecution's doctors had said. But even still, the experts kind of on both sides were saying that even with dementia, they can still know right from wrong. And so I think it was just about the fact that, well, the prosecution's doctors pretty much said he was feigning a lot of his symptoms. What's happened over the last 2 years, I'm sure he has declined over the last 2 years. But again, when we're looking at the case, we're only looking at 2010 through 2020. That is the period we have to look at. And so what was his mental state during that? Well, that's why they were showing, scenes from Real Housewives. They were, talking about speeches he had given. And so while he may not have been in the best shape, and I don't know if it was real or what, it kind of didn't matter for this trial.
What was the defense's approach in trying to exonerate Tom Girardi? Because I feel like going into it, it kind of seemed like the writing was already on the wall. So what was their defense?
They really were putting a lot of this on the CFO, Chris Camone. Chris Camone has been arrested. He's still in custody because he was trying to basically flee the country. They arrested him. And the defense was pretty much saying, look, we can show that Chris Camone has stolen, we believe, $53 million. And Girardi Keese wasn't able to sustain that. And Tom Girardi was just trying to run a firm and he couldn't figure out, because he's getting information from his CFO and they're saying he can't figure out, why they are having shortages. So he's putting his own money in the firm and they showed, where he had put, I think like nearly 40 million into the operating accounts and, over 40 million into the trust accounts. And they're saying he was trying to keep the business going, not realizing that Chris Camone was taking it out of the other side. So that was really their whole argument, a lot of their whole argument, in addition to the fact that during the last few years of the firm, they were basically saying that other people in the firm were taking advantage of the fact that he had mentally declined and were propping him up like Weekend at Bernie's and basically had this party going on and Tom had no idea what was going on. So that was their two main arguments.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of witnesses that made that defense pretty hard to believe. Based on your opinion, because I know there were a lot, what witnesses made the most impact and swayed a guilty verdict in the end?
I think for me, hearing from Judy Selberg, I think was the first one that sort of she was just a really strong, solid witness. Everything she said, there was no kind of iffiness about it. She's like, this is exactly what happened. These are all the emails I sent to follow up. My husband died. I was trying to get money. I followed up. And she was very believable. There was another, witness. I didn't really talk about him much in my recaps, but John Abbasian, I think is how you say his last name. He was a lawyer who essentially would bring cases to bigger firms because he was just kind of a one-man shop. And so he needed, larger firms to handle these, major tort cases or personal injury claims that he didn't have the resources for, and they would split the fee with him. He was the one that brought the Erika Saldana case to Girardi Keese. Erika Saldana was a drunk driver, hit her and her family. Her, I think 1-year-old son was became a paraplegic. And they were suing both the manufacturer of the car maker of the car seat her son was in, as well as the drunk driver. John brought that to Girardi Keese because he had met Erika. And he was a strong witness because he was basically saying once the settlement money came in, the other attorney who was working on it said, you take the check, put it in your trust account. And John was like, okay. He thought it was a little bit strange. Now, he believes the reason that was being done is because that attorney suspected that money was not going to clients and he wanted it
Mm.
to be safe and go to Erika. And so John said when he went to pick up the check that Tom Girardi found out and brought him into his office, and he said he basically like ripped into him and scolded him and called him every name in the book. And he was like, "You better give me that check," and took the check from him.
Oh,
So I thought
wow.
that was pretty strong testimony. And then yesterday, after the verdict, when the jurors were coming out, reporters were trying to talk to the jurors. Most of them refused, did not want to talk. One juror did talk, and I was just listening. But when I was talking to the other reporters, he was saying that I was because I wanted to know what witnesses affected the jurors the most, and they said, at different times, different witnesses affected, but they said Erika Saldana. He said for him, like the Erika Saldana testimony really affected him.
I mean, over the course of this 10 years, it was reported that Tom had over 200 complaints to the state bar. And I mean, we only tried 4 of them, right? So why do you think that he had 200 complaints and nothing was done?
Well, actually, the 200 complaints went back to the 80s. These were over
Oh, okay.
40 years, which was even crazier because it was like, this started so long ago. And I think we all know why. I don't think it's been fully proven. Some of it has been alleged. LA Times did a story on, showing gifts and money that Tom was paying to people that were working at the state bar. And, those people, I think some of them have, been questioned, have been investigated. But again, it's this verdict that they need to really further deep dive into that, because you can't get away with that level of corruption without multiple people helping you, over the years.
Right. Were you surprised at all that it was guilty on all 4 counts?
I wasn't surprised. I pretty much figured that was, how it was going to play out. And again, yeah, like you said, they were only trying 4 cases. So that was I will say that was the riskiest part of it, because they had to make sure it was those 4
Mm-hmm.
cases that the jury would believe. And, 3 of those cases happened in the 2019-2020 period, which the defense was arguing, he was out of his mind. They were basically saying he was out of his mind. He was dementia. He didn't know. But, the Joe Gomez case goes back to 2010. It settled in 2013 when, he was very with it. They had other arguments for why that didn't happen. But yeah, I think if you were in there listening to the evidence, I just couldn't see how they could come back with a not guilty.
And then during closing arguments, because as the Bravo fans, we're all sitting here wondering how much was Erika talked about? Was she involved at all? Which we'll get into that in a second. But you actually got to see some unseen, behind the scenes footage of Tom and Erika while they were filming The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. What did you see, and why did they show it in the closing arguments?
It was funny because when I walked into the courtroom, they were setting up for their closing arguments, and I see her on screen with that pink dress, and I just laughed because I remember that whole pink dress went viral.
Yep.
Because multiple people wore the dress, and then Brands by Bravo made a meme, and then Erika, I think, shared it but didn't credit, and it was a whole thing. And I was like, oh my God, the pink dress. It was from season 10, which aired in 2020. And this particular scene was filmed in November of 2019. And Tom was sitting there and talking to the women. And I think the part we actually saw aired, I don't remember the part we saw aired from that scene, to be honest with you, but I didn't remember seeing this part where he started talking about, he gave a speech at Loyola and 67% of the graduating class was women. And so they were just saying, he's reciting statistics. He's on top of it, and he's just given a speech. This is November of 2019. And then they also wanted to show it because he talks about, he's telling everyone, we're all in the business of persuasion. I'm in the business of persuading. I have to persuade that jury. And they also wanted to show, this is what he did as a plaintiff's attorney for, 40 years. He had to be the most persuasive man to get what he wanted. And he did. He was very successful. Maybe one of the most successful.
Were there any other mentions of Erika? And what does this verdict mean for her, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, she came up, while she's not charged criminally in this case, her name came up a lot because, when we saw the money that was going from Girardi Keys to EJ Global, it said payments made on behalf of, EJ Global, either money transferred or payments. And it totaled over $20 million, like $21 million from 2010 through 2020. And you have to just wonder, where did that money come from? And we're
Hmm.
not saying that she's responsible or knew where that money came from. But what we're saying is, like, if that money is victim money, this is when we kind of roll our eyes and say, stop fighting over earrings. Because at
Right.
the end of the day, you had a very nice life. You benefited. Lots of people around Tom benefited. And now it's gone away, and you have to kind of accept that he lied to you. But that's a lot of money. And so I know that there's civil cases, and she might have to answer, who knows, to the IRS, because again, this is money that's flown, that's gone on tax returns. She might still have to answer to them. I know she still has a civil case separately with the Marco Chris Pasila case, and that's completely separate. So she's still going to have some civil things that she's going to have to deal with, even if she's never, charged criminally, which I don't think she will be.
What happened to those earrings? Do we know? Because I feel like every time I opened People magazine, it was she had to give him back and then she didn't have to give him back. Do you know, like, where is that at right now? What's the deal?
Basically, she had to turn them over. There was a fight for them, but then they did get auctioned off. And then Ronald Richards, the attorney Ronald Richards, who likes to speak on her a lot, I believe his girlfriend, or I don't know if they're married, but his girlfriend is the one he bought. I think he bought the earrings for something like $250,000. I think $250,000. He bought the earrings. I remember the girlfriend wearing the earrings, posting them on Instagram, all of that. Then there was an appeal, which Erika won, which we saw in the season, her talking about, I just want you to know I won my appeal. And, she
Hmm.
expected this sort of, like, all the women to be like, we're sorry. The appeal was really nothing more than a technicality, because essentially, when the bankruptcy trustee took over Girardi Keys, they are acting essentially in place of Tom Girardi. And we saw this in court, those earrings were purchased directly with the Girardi Keys Trust attack. It's at Girardi Keys Trust, and it was $750,000 made out to M&M Jewelers.
Yeah.
Because those earrings were purchased with a trust, that is why the bankruptcy trustee essentially, that's how she won the appeal, because they're saying we actually don't have kind of ownership over those, because it belongs to the trust, which we essentially, those belong to clients. The trust money belongs to clients, and that's why it was a technicality. It's not, there's still going to be a hearing. I think it's coming up at the end of September to go back, because I think I think the judge wants to see proof that it was purchased with trust funds so that they can then uphold their original ruling or something like that. I don't know the technicality, but that's basically it. It was just an appeal. If you want it on technicality, and those earrings, she should not be crying over.
What happens next? I mean, he's facing 20 years per count, right? But does somebody with dementia go to prison? Are they going to appeal it? What are the next steps in this? I have no idea.
Yeah, so the U.S. Attorney Martin Estrada came out after the verdict, did a press conference, which I watched, and someone asked that. They said, what do you do with an 85-year-old man who's just
Right.
been sentenced to, up to 80 years in prison? Because again, it's 4 counts. Each count carries a maximum of 20 years. So he could serve, not really serve, but he could be sentenced to up to 80 years. And so what Estrada basically said is, there's sentencing guidelines, and the defense basically has 6 weeks now to provide a sentencing brief. The government then has 4 weeks to respond to that, and they're going to give their recommendations. Estrada said, we are going to take a lot of things into consideration, but like, just because he's old doesn't mean we're not going to send him to prison, essentially. I'm sure the defense will, come back with more reporting showing, how he's declined further and how he can't go to a prison, and how they, probably will suggest some sort of, assisted living. They'll probably, I don't know where old people go, but that'll be their recommendation, some sort of house arrest or something like along those lines. I don't know if the government will agree to that. Um, because, they do have to make an example of this man, because it was
Mhm.
so egregious, but also because there's so many other players involved that, look, They said on the, the IRS agent said on the stand, there are other target letters that still went out to other attorneys for Girardi Keys. So there could still be other indictments, other trials coming. So they're going to make an example.
So take your rest now because you might be back at the court.
I know.
Well, thank you so much. I know this was just a crash course, but you go deep into this kind of stuff all the time on your podcast, Pop Crime. Please tell the MPT listeners where they can find you on social media and where they can follow along with the podcast.
Follow me on TikTok or Instagram at The Talk of Shame. And yeah, if you go to, Apple, Spotify, and follow Pop Crime, I'm doing new episodes every week. I just did an episode with Chelsea Devantez, the author. I have an episode coming out about the Blake Lively scandal coming out this week. And then obviously also on Sirius XM, I still talk about reality TV. So Reality Checked every Monday, sometimes Thursdays, talking about all the reality stuff.
Kiki, thank you so much. We'll do this again soon.
Yes, thank you.
All right, you guys, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of MPT. Please leave me a review because I did get a 1-star over the weekend. Apparently, somebody doesn't like that I ask for T's and P's. They said I'm annoying and ignorant. And it's a joke. I hope you know that the T's and P's is a joke. I know there's more serious things going on in the world, but also I don't like 1-star review. So if you haven't done so yet, leave me a little 5-star boop boop, a little love you like a sis. And I'll see you back next week for another episode of MPT. Have a great week. And as always, I love you like a sis. See ya.